This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Our guest today is Gretchen Driscoll. She's a state representative from Saline who is willing to give up her seat in order to take on Tim Walberg in the 7th Congressional District next year. Representative Driscoll, welcome to City Pulse.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Well, you are finishing your first. You're in your second term. You've won by an increasing margin in the second election, yet you're willing to give that up to take on a Republican who has won 3 out of the last 4 times in a district that has, since it was redistricted over 20 years ago, has been Republican, except for the one term Mark Schauer won. Mm-hmm. And Pam Burns lost in double digits last year. What do you think is going to be different in 2016?
Well, I'm a different candidate, and it's a different election cycle, and I think that voters are interested in a different representative in Congress.
And what issues would distinguish yourself from Walberg?
Well, I have a really strong track record of working hard in my community. I was mayor for 14 years. I was locally elected for 20 years, and it was a nonpartisan seat. Most city governments in Michigan are nonpartisan, so I'm very used to working with 6 other people and talking about how to help the people in our community. I didn't know whether they were Republican or Democrat. It didn't really matter to me. What I wanted to do was work together with other people, not only on my city council, but also in my community, to help solve problems. And that's what's really important to me. That's why I'm here, actually, in Lansing. That's why I ran in Lansing, because I was concerned about the direction we were going in as far as solving problems and what my experience had been talking to people that moved to Saline, that grew up in Saline, businesses that were interested in growing in the community or coming to Saline. And I found that the things that were really important were not necessarily a really, really low tax rate. It was good quality schools and good quality of life, a place where they could recruit employees that would want to move to a community where there was a sense of pride and an economy that they could support and grow in. So I think I come from a different background, I guess I would say. I haven't been partisan up until very recently.
Well, let's find out more about that background.
Sure.
Where did you come from and what have you done?
Well, I was born in New York, and I went to college in Virginia, and I majored in accounting. And
Lynchburg College,
Lynchburg
which
College.
is a home of quite a conservative crowd.
Well, that college actually was a lot of folks from New Jersey and New York. But yes, Liberty Baptist College is there, and so that's where Jerry Fall was from. And but that was not the school that I went to. And it was a small school, and it was affordable for my family. That was a big issue. And I know college education is a big issue because I've got 3 kids right now in college. Excuse me. But so I went to school in Virginia because it was affordable, a fixed tuition, and the deal for my parents was they would pay for tuition and I needed to pay for everything else. And I knew I needed to get out of school with a degree in 4 years, be able to have a career. I was very cognizant of my financial situation, and we didn't take on any loans back then. I graduated from college in 1980, so it was a while ago. And so I took accounting, and it was relatively easy, and I knew I could get a job. And so I graduated in accounting, and then I had some friends that I met at college that were from the D.C. area, so I went to the D.C. For my career, my first career.
And you went to George Washington University?
I did. I had a couple of different jobs while I was in D.C., and I worked for a company at one point called ComStat, and they pay for your MBA. So I was working on my CPA, and I worked for Coopers & Lybrand and a couple of other private companies. I did accounting. Mostly I did the financial statements and the books. I wasn't an auditor. So people think of accountants, there's 2, private and public accountants. And for the most part, I was always a private accountant, even though I did work for a couple of public accounting firms. So I worked for ComStat, and they paid for my MBA. So I went to school at night, and then I ended up getting a job at KPMG, which is pretty major public accounting firm. It was, I think, Big 6 back then, and was responsible for the books for their National Tax Office, and also was the 3rd largest practice in the country. So it was a pretty challenging job, if you can imagine being an accountant for accountants. I worked with really, really smart people, and it's very privileged. I learned a lot and was challenged. But it was very long hours, and I ended up having, I got married, and we had a baby, and I never saw him. And my husband got a job offer in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a startup company. And I was ready to maybe spend a little bit more time with my family and have a career that's a little more balanced. So I'd never been to Michigan. So it was actually very interesting. I came home from work, and he said, he got this job offer in Ann Arbor, and I said, okay. A little nervous about that. His family was from Mississippi. My family's from New York, and we came out here with not knowing anybody. But I love Michigan, and that was 27 years ago.
Settled in Saline, yep. And then you got the political bite, I guess.
Well, actually, I was raised to help. My family background, on both sides of my family, I have military service background. Particularly on my mother's side, many generations of military service. Career military, and so I was taught, when you are asked to help out, you do that, and you have a responsibility. I was raised in a church where I was always active and helping out in the community, and Girl Scout, just as a responsible citizen, I was raised that way, very, very seriously raised that way. So I moved to Saline, and I had a young family, I had this one son, and it's long winters in Saline, and I felt like there were some things that we could be doing there. There was no place to play inside in the winter back then, and when you have a baby and when you go to the mall, like, what else can you do that's fun to be with other friends and family and neighbors? And so there was a challenge grant by a local business that came out in the local paper. If the city raised $1 million, this company would match another $1 million to build a recreation center with an indoor pool. And I thought that was a great idea, and it coincidentally happened that a guy that lived across the street was running for re-election for city council, and he asked, he came by for me to sign the petition, for his re-election, and I said, I think that's a great idea. I'm new to the community. What can I do to help? And he's like, the next day, he and the mayor called and said, we want you to chair fundraising. And I was like, I don't know anybody here. And he said, that's perfect, because you haven't made any enemies yet, right? And they kind of helped me. And so we worked on that project, and now we have a rec center, and it's a great place for families to come together, people to stay healthy. And that's really what got me into the community in Saline. I met a lot of really wonderful people, and then
and you were mayor for 14 years?
So I started as a volunteer, and then they asked, we had an environmental committee, and just one thing after another, and then they asked me to run for council, and it's been a great honor. Local government, you get to work with amazing people that really are committed to their community, that really care, and they care about their neighbors. It's a very personal, a lot of relationships, and I really think that's something that we all want to see more of. And so that's really what my foundation is. And so it doesn't, it's been interesting to come to Lansing. So I ran for state representative because I was concerned about the cuts to public education. Saline has a really strong public school system that was really struggling financially. That's our number one reason we have people moving to Saline and businesses growing in Saline is our public school system has a great reputation. And over in our local paper, people would say, we had a welcome to Saline column for many years. Every week it would come out, I came to Saline because of the schools. If you're not investing in your schools, you have a problem with your property values, your business climate is affected. So I was very concerned about the direction the state was going a few years ago. And I worked really hard, as an accountant. One of the first things I did when I was on city council, we did a 5-year financial plan, but budgeted 5 years out, because it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but we had serious financial problems when I first started, because we didn't do a long-range budget. We were pretty much, what are we taking in today and what's going out? And we didn't really do that projection. That's really, really important to understand the trends. And I see that as a problem in this Lansing also. We don't talk about where we were with revenues and where we're going. I mean, we go 1 or 2 years back and forward, but really with the term limits, I think things have, the trends are really hard to follow because of term limits.
But even with term limits, you would probably get reelected for a third term in the House, and yet you're willing to give that up to run against a Republican who seems to be settling in politically. What have you calculated that makes you think you have a real shot at this?
Well, I think I'm a different kind of, I think that the incumbent's very partisan. It's been my observation, and people have expressed that concern to me even when I was mayor, that it's and I think that I've been working locally for a long time, and even as a state representative, I spent a lot of time in my communities trying to help in the new communities I'm learning more about and what the challenges are. And I think people really don't want that. They really want people that will work together and try to solve problems and not point fingers at each other. So, and I'm one of those kind of people, and I believe in it, and I feel like I'm going to, show what I think we could be doing and how we could be helping the people in this district. The fact of the matter is our economy may be improving some, but there's a lot of people that are not feeling the results of that improvement. And I think that the opportunities have been really constricted, and I do think there's a lot of work to be done there. The investment in our school systems, early education is really important. I mean, that's really been identified that investing in our pre-K children really can move the needle, and those are things that are really important to the people in the district. And
but is Congressman Wahlberg against investing in early education?
I mean, he doesn't support Head Start, which is the premier program. And there's new programs. I mean, our governor is supportive of pre-K. So, yeah, I think there are definitely some areas, pre-K, and then community colleges, I think are, especially as universities get more and more expensive, community colleges are the affordable path for a lot of folks. Two of my kids are at the community college in Washtenaw County taking classes, and will hopefully transfer to a university. But at this point, they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and it's about affordability, right? We want to make sure that we can be wise with how we spend our money.
What about on some social issues? For example, choice.
Well, yeah. So that was something that the incumbent's he's a very devout Christian. I support him for that, but I know a lot of Christians that believe that this is a choice between a woman and her family and her doctor, and it shouldn't be regulated by government.
And you think folks in the 7th District overall would agree with you on that?
I do think that most people believe that this is a personal issue between a woman and her doctor, and what the laws are doing are making it more and more restrictive and an inability to make that personal decision.
Gay rights?
I think that is also changing a lot in the district, and I think that the bottom line is what we most are focused on in the district, though, is economic opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and that will be what I'm mostly focusing. But I do think that our country's shifting. I think that people believe that people have a right to love the person they love and have the civil contract and the support that they have. I think that's something that people are open to, yes.
And are you supportive of same-sex marriage?
I am.
Let's talk about some state issues, and we have a big one coming up in May. This is Proposal 1 that
Yes.
would raise the sales tax 1% and would largely support roads, but certainly there's a lot more to Proposal 1 than that. Some people are very critical of the legislature and the governor for failing to solve this problem without having to take it to the voters. How did you feel about the compromise?
Well, I found it very frustrating. I actually have been, as a local elected person, very involved with transportation funding. I was chair of our Washtenaw County Transportation Study Committee, which does transportation planning and programming for the county. I was chair of the MPO for the Detroit regional area, which is the 7 counties, which takes the federal dollars that comes into the Detroit 7-county region and allocates the dollars and plans for the 30-year transportation is a very complex. It's not just, tomorrow we're going to fix this road over here. There's a plan and a program for this, and we've identified many years ago, actually under Governor Granholm, if you may remember, that there was a transportation funding task force that was put together. There was legislators that were interested in, we had the same challenge with the road funding, and so instead of addressing it with a revenue fix, they did a study, which turns out it was the second study under Governor Granholm, and I ended up representing the cities and villages around the state as one of the stakeholders. So I worked with Rich Studley, the Chamber of Commerce president. He was co-chair with Ron Gillow for this study, and there was some representatives. My predecessor, Pam Burns, Representative Anderson, I believe, was on there. I think he was representative. I'm trying to remember. Maybe he was a senator. He might have been a senator. So it was quite a diverse group of stakeholders, and it was identified under the previous governor that we needed money. And then the current governor had a study that also identified that we need over $1 billion. So there's been a continual conversation in Lansing that we need more money. The challenge is having a consensus come around how to fund it. And I agree with you. I think it's been very frustrating. I was on the Transportation Committee hoping to have an opportunity to contribute some of my understanding and research, and it was really done in a very, during lame duck, it was very frustrating for me.
Well, frustration aside, the polls are saying that it's not going to pass, and it's going to be right back in the lap of the legislature. What's going to be different? Do you think anything will change?
Actually, I think I'm very concerned about it not passing, because if you spend 2 years, and a lot of people were term limited, right? So they were, that whole lame duck thing is a whole other conversation, that people can vote on such a significant issue in lame duck. I think it's challenging to me personally, but that's the environment I'm in. So you sort of have to work in that environment, right? But I don't see it getting better if this doesn't pass. We still have a $1 billion shortfall. I'm not on the Transportation Committee anymore. I have spent a lot of time researching alternatives personally, because this is really important to our state. This is an economic development issue. This is a public safety issue. This isn't just going to go away because we don't vote for it. It still needs to be addressed. So I don't know what the Transportation Committee is going to come up with. There are other alternatives. There are something called public-private partnerships. Other states are doing that. I talked to the Pennsylvania DOT director. MDOT brought him in last year because Pennsylvania did do what I think a lot of people in Michigan were looking for Lansing to do, which they voted to do an increase in revenues, right? And part of that was identifying opportunities to work with private industry to help fund the infrastructure. So there are some tools out there nationally that I think we could be using more. But it is, I will say, I think it's not only a state problem, but it's also a national problem. Our infrastructure in general has been identified as being really inadequate and deteriorating, and we haven't been able to have the wherewithal to invest in it.
Why do you think the people of Michigan are showing right now that they are unwilling to tax themselves more for something so basic?
I think part of it is because it's very confusing. I talk to people every day. I was at a League of Women Voters session last night in one of my communities, and I have coffees at least once a week, and a lot of people don't understand this proposal. Part of it is because we are talking about a sales tax increase that's not going to transportation, right, to the transportation system. And that just gets people, they don't hear anything else. The fact of the matter is, most people don't know we already have sales tax at the gas pump, and it doesn't go to the roads. But I guarantee you, 98% of the people you talk to don't know that. And if we don't get them to learn that by May 5th, they probably will vote against it. But we already are paying sales tax at the gas pump that isn't going to the roads. So what we're doing is taking that off and filling that $800 million hole with a 1% sales tax increase. And so I think that's the first thing that people are like, oh, and then the other thing, what I'm hearing when I talk to people is that there's a lot of different parts in it, right? So they're frustrated that it couldn't be simpler. Well, it's not simpler. It wasn't simple to start.
Why isn't it simpler? Was it political?
Well, I think partly it wasn't simpler because it's not simple right now. Right now, the way we fund, the way taxes on fuel works isn't simple. We have a 6% flat tax and we have a sales tax. So it's not simple from today. So I think that's part of the problem is if you want to open that up and fix it, some people are saying we're fixing it by taking the sales tax off, right? Because we shouldn't have tax on gas if it doesn't go to the roads. That's what some people's argument is. So they're trying to fix that problem. But what it's doing is it's almost making it more complicated because you can't do a partial percentage tax increase. So that's taking, so then there's other pieces in it. And, then the earned income tax credit. I mean, there's other pieces in it too that are causing consternation. An
important piece, of course, is education.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's been stressed very much. Do you think that the governor, despite quite a bit of money to make his case, is just simply failing to get the message out there?
I don't know. I do think that, like I said earlier, I think everything that, when I talk to people one-on-one and at coffees and just out in general, I talk to people every day, all day. That's what I do. That's my job, is to hear what people are, learn what people are thinking, and try to help solve the problems. We have a big problem in the state with our road system and our transportation system, actually, not just the roads. So that's our problem. We need to figure out how to fix it. And I think the first thing we need to be making sure people understand is there currently is sales tax at the fuel pump, and that is not going to the roads. If we just start with that conversation, maybe we can help overcome this other struggle with having this increase that's not going to the roads. Because I think that's where people, they immediately shut down when they hear, well, this isn't even going to the roads. Do you see what I'm saying? When
Right.
we're already doing it.
Right.
So maybe they don't care, and think you don't really see it. I mean, people I've talked to. I mean, I got on transportation committee. The first thing I did was have a town hall. Like, I started in January. I had a town hall in my community in April. I brought a panel of local road funders, MDOT, and I said, what do you want? Where do you want to see? Do we have a problem? Everybody agreed. We do have a problem. I think everybody in the state agrees we have a problem. Our roads are falling apart. They're getting worse. They're going to cost more and more money as time goes on. So how do we fix the problem? The majority of people told me they wanted a use tax in that town hall. So I don't know. I think it's going to be challenging if it doesn't pass. So right now, I think for me, the most important thing is making sure people understand how things work right now and how this proposal is going to fix what's working right now, and make sure that the misconception, because the misconception, people are like, well, the sales tax isn't going to the roads. That's what most people are upset about, really, if you talk to people. We're already doing that. So that's to fix it. So if it doesn't pass, I don't know what's going to happen.
Let's turn to some other issues. You've spoken out about how easy it is to go from a government position to being a lobbyist in Michigan. How serious a problem is that?
Well, I think it's a problem because of term limits. I think people really, the continuity of governance and knowledge, I don't think we have that very strongly in Lansing. And so I think a lot of what happens is people come to Lansing and they want to do things because they were sent here to, some people actually are here to prevent things from happening. But I think a lot of people, so there's like that balance of things. But I think because there's no, I would just say when you start as a freshman legislator, we have an orientation. MSU does this great orientation. The staff, Lansing staff does it too, but there's also one that MSU does, and they bring in, it's like I think it's 2 days or day and a half. And I'll never forget, like the last session was two former legislators who talked about their most important bills. And what they were really trying to talk about is the importance of working across the aisle and developing consensus. But both of their bills, one took, I think, 12 years, the other took 14 or 16 years. And we were all just like, we have 6 years here. You're saying we need to develop relationships in order to get good policy, and it takes time, and be patient and learn to work together, and but we don't have the time, right? So I think the concern with the revolving door situation is, so you're already looking. I'm actually kind of shocked. People are already looking while they're in office as to what they are going to be doing when they get out. And some people have a business or a career outside of Lansing, but a lot of people don't. So I think that is very concerning, how you vote and how you think it. Are you really representing the people of Michigan, or are you really representing more narrow interests?
And other states have higher barriers.
Yeah.
What should Michigan do?
Well, at a minimum, we need to have more time between. I think that would be at a minimum.
A year?
Yeah, I have 2 years. That's what
2 years.
So I think that's a reasonable. Personally, I actually started back at school. I loved my public service as a mayor. I love helping people. I love working with other people to solve problems. And I learned that was really something that was as a passion of mine. So I was originally planning on going to graduate school in public policy. I had been trying to find a job. Mayor in Saline pays $4,000 a year. We have a professional city manager. I had a professional career in accounting and finance, but I love this work, the public service work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be as an elected official, because the partisanship is very difficult for me. But So I was accepted at U of M back in 2012 when I ended up running for state representative, and I asked them to defer it. So last fall I asked them, went back and I said, could I take a class this semester? I think it would help me with my legislation in Lansing, learn more about issues, and really feed my knowledge capacity. And they were very gracious because usually you have to do it in a year. And they said, as long as you finish it in 5 years and I can take one class this semester, it's about all I can manage. Because it's very hard being in Lansing, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Classes are Monday, Wednesday. They're very structured in the Ford School. So, but it was really great because I met some really wonderful people, really smart, passionate young people, and I learned a lot in my first 2 semesters, and I'm learning a lot. And so that was my plan. Is in 4 years I was going to be term limited, and I was going to finish my degree and get a job that was going to be on the ground helping communities.
We only have about 2 minutes to go. I wanted to ask you about both medical marijuana and legalizing marijuana, in part because Mayor Bernero just spoke out in Ann Arbor last weekend calling for legalization. Your colleague, Mike Calton, is trying to get dispensaries for medical marijuana legalized again. Where are you on these issues?
I think medical marijuana was voted for by the people of the state of Michigan. So I think there's some challenges to how, I know there's been some challenges, but I do think we need to figure out a way to address the challenges and make medical marijuana safe and legal for folks that need it. It is something that's really important for people that are struggling, that have health issues. And I've met people that have, different diseases that have used medical marijuana to their benefit. So I definitely support medical marijuana. Legalizing, I'm not ready for that. So I think.
And now Mayor Bernero says that politicians are behind the people on this issue. Well, why not legalize? I think pot for potholes.
I think there's
Tax
I think there's a lot of complications there, and I'm not ready. That's an issue. Sometimes it's good to let other states like Colorado and other folks figure out if this is the right thing to do. But not at this time. I'm not ready for that. So.
All right. Let's turn to one national issue, I guess. It is Hillary Clinton. Are you excited that she seems to be the candidate?
I think it would be great to have a woman as president.
And what do you like about her?
Well, she's a strong, smart woman, and I think she stands up for things that are important to her. And she's a hard worker. She has developed a really great reputation as Secretary of State internationally. I think that's really important that we have good relations with the rest of the world. We are in a global economy, and we need to be aware of that and work together with other countries and figure out how to solve our problems while making sure that we have good job opportunities here, especially in the state of Michigan. So I think she's smart, she's very experienced, and I think she'll bring a lot to the table. And
you're not concerned that, another Clinton, on the Republican side it's another Bush, there's this hegemony concern.
I know, I've read about that, and there may be other candidates. I mean, you asked me about Hillary. I don't know if there'll be another candidate. I'm not, I'm running as a Democrat, but I am new to the partisanship. I will tell you that. I was not an active Democrat when I was mayor.
Why'd you choose the Democratic Party?
Because I feel like the room for moderation in the Republican Party, and I was raised in a Republican family. My dad passed away last year, but he was a moderate Republican. I'm not sure where the moderate is anymore. And I have 3 young adult children who are very concerned about see a lot of times Republican Party is the party we don't want to do that, but what's the solution? And I will say that I've been very concerned about the cuts to schools and local governments in the state of Michigan. The way that we have been able to bring business to Saline was by having good infrastructure, good schools, good quality of life, and those things take an investment by the state, and the state, when we had a recession, chose to cut in the things that actually promote quality of life and the environment. One of our most unique and best resources is our fresh water. We need to be really careful. We're doing a better job protecting that. So there's a lot of pieces. I don't see, I think the Republicans are, at this point in time, more and more conservative.
All right, well, we are out of time. Thank you very much. Good luck in your race.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.
At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.